Let's rewind like a VHS. Turn back the time, feel the beat in our chest. Make sure that we never forget. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. Let's concede that we wanna believe that the past was only a dream, just a place that we never could leave. Follow us on the way to retrieve. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. Like a VHS, turn back the time, feel the beat in our chest. Make sure that we never forget. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. Let's concede that we wanna believe that the past was only a dream, just a place that we never could leave. Follow us on the way to retrieve. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS.
What up, everyone? DJ Anubis here with you on the Mount Turning Podcast, here with my great friend and co-host, Kevin Lambert of the Entertainment Headquarters. This is the Cinematic Synergy. Thank you, sir, for being here as always. It's nice to see you again. It's kind of funny, recalling this is like one of my earliest podcast series that I kicked off. So Kevin was like one of my early birds of the collaborations that I started doing. Yeah. So it's kind of fun that we're still kicking these ones out. So how you been?
Very, very well. And can I just say that intro was fantastic. I don't know who helped or who, inspired you, but, it's fantastic. I'm joking. Yeah. I'm joking. No,
it's true. Like anybody that's ever watched the Entertainment Headquarters stuff, man, this guy is a master at fucking getting intros and backgrounds, and it's really, really cool to see this stuff. So I do appreciate the influence and inspiration for sure. But as anyone knows with this show, you and I, we alternate picks. We try to get these out as much as possible, but it's usually about once a month because we do have a lot of other stuff that we do. But this time around was my choice, and I chose 2006, The Illusionist, starring Edward Norton, Paul Giamatti, Jessica Biel, Rufus Sewell, and Eddie Martin. And basically, it's a 2006 American romantic mystery film written and directed by Neil Berger. And it basically takes the story from a short story called Eisenham the Illusionist. And it talks about this magician as a kid that is befriended by a young girl played by Biel, who reunites with his love years later as he becomes like this master of illusion and magic and a social standing, but he's also the mix of this like political turmoil that's going on between Rufus Sewell's character, the prince, and of course his engagement to Jessica Biel's character. I gotta remember her name here. Duchess Sophie. So she's the Duchess. And before we dive into our review here, I do want to take people back a little bit, and I'm going to play the trailer so people kind of. There you go.
Mhm.
So you had never seen this film?
Nope, and I was quite surprised. Like you mentioned off when we were in the back, how this and the Prestige came out the same year, and I remember seeing the Prestige with Hugh Jackman and liking that one, and I had maybe heard about this, but just never had the opportunity to see it. So going into this, I kind of knew the backstory. I knew it was based on like a short story, and all of that thing, but I hadn't had the opportunity to watch it. So watching it for the first time, it was really interesting, because the great thing about this, it's not one of those dynamic films with massive special effects or spectacle. It's all about character driven, and for me this is more or less like a crime caper, something like like a Knives Out film or something like that, where you're trying to figure out the mystery behind it all, and is it really happening, is it real, is it fake, who's the culprit, and that's what really took it by surprise. And another thing before we move forward, I will mention, I really enjoyed the performance of Paul Giamatti in this. He is absolutely brilliant. Like, I've always knew he was a great actor.
Yes.
And he's been brilliant in a lot of things. But I think obviously he's much more regarded now as a really fine actor. But I think when this film came out back in 2006, I think he did a lot of film roles that really elevated him.
Yes.
To get him to where he is today in his career, because I think he's not long won a big award. I don't know if it was an Emmy or I don't know what program it was, but he's been winning awards left, right, and centre since, he's really coming to his own. And after seeing The Illusionist, I can honestly see why his career kind of catapulted and he got to where he is in terms of as good as an actor he is, because it's smaller roles like this where he really just sinks his teeth into what he's given, and that's, I think, the magic with him, and that rise that he's had, it's well deserved.
Yeah, I had seen him the first time I saw him was in Private Parts with Howard Stern back in '95, and then he did a role in Truman Show where it wasn't a really big role either. But you said it right. Whatever role he's in, he's very impactful. You remember that role that he's playing because he stands out all the time. So when I saw this, he blew me away. Like, really, this was the movie that sort of sold me on him as like one of the best actors of our time right now, because I really enjoy his work. Which is kind of crazy because really overall, between him, Norton, Beale, and Rufus Sewell, like they all killed it. Like they are all really great in this film, and it's like, and for those that don't know, young Eisenheim is actually played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who went on to do Godzilla. So I kept looking at that when I rewatched. I was like, he looks so familiar. So when I looked it up, it's like, oh my god, it's Aaron.
Yeah. Craven the Hunter he's recently been in, and Bullet. The thing that really like you say, he's grown as an actor, but for me is, I know he's always been like a young. I think he's always been cast. Yes, he's got like talent as an actor, but I generally feel even though he's got talent as an actor, I think the majority of his roles he's been cast because of his look, because he ain't a bad looking guy. Like even I was drooling on the freaking Craven the Hunter poster. Let's be honest, but I really seen how good of an actor he was when he did Bullet Train.
Yes, and again, great point, because he is somebody that I know we're kind of going offside a little bit, but he's somebody that reminds me a lot of like Robert Pattinson, because Pattinson I saw with Twilight in the role of the vampire, he was very boring, very stale. Johnson in Godzilla 2014,
wooden as hell. Wooden as hell.
But both those actors and other roles that I've seen, you can tell they have range. They are very, very good. And so, like, I'm kind of really happy for both of them, because they were able to showcase just how diverse and versatile they are as actors.
In two, before we get into the 2 movies that they showed even more range, were Robert Eggers films.
Yes.
The Lighthouse and then Nosferatu.
Yep. Really good films. But yeah, so The Illusionist basically, again, Eisenheim and Sophie, the Duchess, when they're young, 2 different classes. Like he's a little bit more on the poor side, she's a bit of on the richer side, but they befriend each other. And, at some point they're separated, and he goes on to travel the world a little bit and comes across a magician who really impresses him. And it's kind of cool. A testament to both Taylor and Edward Norton. They actually practiced a lot of these magic tricks. The stuff that you see, most of it's real that he's doing. So it's clever for them to actually do the hard work and not have CGI do it all for you.
Yeah, that's another thing you've got to appreciate with this movie is that, you get like the big budget movies where, like say for a Marvel film, you'll get all of the actors do a lot of stunt work, practical stunt work, and they've got to spend hours a day or months training ahead for fight sequences. When it comes to little films like this, which it wasn't like a massive Hollywood budget film, it was more like a independent film that was like at the Cannes Film Festival, something along that line. Even though it doesn't have them budget, you've got to respect the attention to detail because they wanted it to look as authentic and as real as possible. So the fact that Norton went out of his way to learn real magic tricks and learn the secrets behind them shows how much this film must have been some sort of a passion project for him. He really wouldn't have took, because we know Norton has that reputation of being a difficult actor and difficult to work with. So for him to, any role he's given or he selects to do, it's something that really intrigues him.
Yeah.
So for him to go into this movie and to put the work in to learn real practical magic, hats off to him, a lot more respect.
Yep. So once they're separated when they're younger, they both grow up in different parts of the world. And, obviously Sophie gets older, but she becomes a duchess, and she's basically being trying to set up to marry the prince, the Crown Prince Leopold, played by Rufus Sewell, who has a history of being kind of violent and not so good to girls that he's involved with. So that's sort of the tension there with them. But of course, Eisenheim goes on to become this great magician. So he ends up coming back to the town that they live in, and he's doing shows, like they're in the theater, and he's like, promoting himself, so everyone gathers to watch, and starts doing his magic tricks. And the one of the key tricks is the orange tree. It basically has like a vase. He just kind of holds his hand up and he drops a seed in, and then he starts pulling what looks like a little small orange pear tree or whatever, the orange tree or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, and it really fascinates Giamatti's character, who plays the chief inspector in the film. He's like so intrigued by this. Like he's very happy. Goes to see him after the show and says, I need to just tell me how you did that. I'm not going to tell anybody. Just tell me how you did that. So again, Eisenheim plays a little trick. Says, well, if you can fool me with, put this in your hand, I'll try to guess which hand it's in. If I get it wrong, I'll tell you what the trick is to the orange tree. So you have to lock that in.
Yeah.
So he does figure out which hand it is. So he doesn't have to give away the secret of the orange tree. But a night or so later, he does another show, and the Crown Prince shows up with the Duchess, and they're watching. And Eisenheim wants to do a specific trick involving one of the people in the audience. So the Duchess comes down because the Crown Prince is an arrogant prick and says, "Yeah, I'll let my girl come down there and do this." Big mistake.
Well, he stands there and he says, "Can I have somebody out of the audience?"
Yeah,
because obviously he's been doing these shows for a long time, and he's built like this reputation. And then the prince, obviously, when he asks for an audience member, the prince stands up. So everyone's like, "Oh shit, the prince!" But then he moved to the side and he looked at the Duchess and went, no, her, basically. He goes, no, you. And I think he did it to try and embarrass her. I think a part of it, it's like a control thing.
Oh, yeah.
And a bit like you've mentioned two important things. One, the thing with the police detective, the chief of police, when he wanted to know, about how the trick is done, he's doing it in a respectful way because I think it's a policeman's nature to solve problems, to solve cases.
Yeah,
so for me,
fascinated with it all.
he's fascinated with it. Where the prince looks at this is just like some sort of trick, and he's trying to be disrespectful to him. He's basically trying to embarrass him. And
and that's the thing too, is the prince, we'll find out in the next thing I'm going to talk about, that he's so arrogant that he thinks he can solve the entire problem of every trick that he has. But anyway, she comes up there and he kind of puts her in a hypnotic spell, does something with a mirror where they can see things happen in the mirror that's not happening on stage. And the crowd's looking at it and they're like, wow, this is incredible, But eventually, after the event is done, the prince calls him, like, after the show, to be with some other royal people to kind of just kind of shoot the shit and talk to Eisenheim and let him kind of do like a private performance type thing. This is one of my favorite parts of the movie because, first Eisenheim does like this photo or this picture that's painting itself. He's not even touching it. He's just letting it do its thing. And the prince, as we talked about, is very arrogant. He gets up. He's like, I can solve this, basically is what he's saying. He says, yeah, he did this and this. And, Eisenheim just kind of tolerating it, like him trying to insult him. Then comes the part about the sword. The sword that the prince has is an important piece to him being a prince anyway. It's sort of like
it's like
heirloom or a weapon that's handed down from generation.
It's like it's been handed down. It's a part of like his inheritance and like a part of his the family name and all of that thing. And it's like a heirloom, like you say, that's been handed down from his father, who's still like the emperor or the king, who you don't actually see on screen. But there's a whole backstory, which I'm sure you'll get into with. It just basically sums up who the fuck the prince is, this horrible bastard, basically, who basically he's so arrogant and egotistical and power hungry, which we've seen this kind of story in other films where you'll have like a peaceful, kind elder king or emperor, and you've got the young heir who will go out of their way to dethrone, their father or whoever. I've seen it. It's like a pattern in films, even bloody, you've got bloody Mufasa and Scar, they did it. You had it in bloody, what was it? Thor with Loki and, Odin. You had it all. So it's not like an uncommon thing that we've seen. But I think in this way, but this prince, the great thing about it is that you see all the scheming behind it all.
Yep. And what makes this moment very cool is that Eisenheim starts talking about the history or the story about Excalibur and how the sword and the stone. So he asked to see the sword from the prince. So the prince is like, sure, yeah, look at it. And you look at it, it's got nice little gems on it and stuff. Keep that in mind. So then he basically starts telling the story and puts the sword straight up into the stage. Like, just, it's not really impaled, but it's sitting there.
It's like standing on the stage without being penetrated into the stage itself.
And so he walks away from it, and then he picks a couple people from the audience to come try to grab it. So an older man and then a younger cousin of the prince come up, and there is a kind of funny moment. The cousin kind of trips as he's going up, and the prince is like, not so eager, cousin. But the cousin gets up. Neither guy can move the sword. Like they're grabbing it and they can't fucking move it. It's just sitting there. It's not like in any kind of, it's not penetrated in anything. It's just sitting there. Won't budge. And so they can't do it. So then, of course, Eisenheim is still kind of addressing the crowd, and the prince goes to take the sword and can't move it either.
Mm-hmm.
And you could clearly tell this pisses off the prince a lot.
Yeah.
And then finally Eisenheim goes like, just whatever he does to keep that sword in place, he lets it go. And the prince gets in there, he goes back to its rightful owner. He tries to play it off. But he was doing it to agitate the shit out of the prince, which I don't blame him. I think that was so fucking funny. But clearly that leads to Duchess to be kind of like, what are you fucking thinking? This guy is a nutcase. Don't piss him off, The last thing you want to do. And of course it does piss him off because he tells the chief inspector, like, hey, we got to shut this guy down. He's just pissed off.
It's all about because he's so smug and arrogant that throughout the whole thing where he was even at the theatre, he tried to embarrass the Duchess. He tried to make her look like a fool. He tries to be cocky and sarcastic and, show kind of like, his big dick energy kind of thing. It's like all about power and ego. But then when this happened in his own home in front of his guests and he couldn't even lift the sword, he's now the one who's been embarrassed, and that's a no-no. So as soon as he's been embarrassed, he's now like, guess what? I want him gone. No one embarrasses me. Find a way to get rid of him.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, because he's, you got a lot of royal people there, people that, supposedly respect him and he respects them. And they're kind of like laughing at him because he can't move his own fucking sword. He can't grab it. Which, if you pay attention to the story of Excalibur, you would know that it's only Arthur who wasn't actual prince or, royal at that time that he grabbed it. He ended up becoming the king.
Yeah, but, which is also symbolizes the illusionist that Norton plays, because he's just a common man.
Yeah.
Who worked. His dad was his dad a farmer? I think
they were carpenters.
A carpenter, but obviously in his dad was a carpenter who worked on the land of the Duchess's family.
Yeah.
So when they were kids, he was like the help son, and she was the daughter of the Lord. And obviously, because she's like obviously a part of this larger aristocratic family, and he's just part of a common family, they were never able to get together. It was forbidden for like a common person and a person in power or in a high ranking family aren't allowed to get together. So the whole idea, I thought, was fantastic storytelling of using this, story of Excalibur to tell basically the story between the Duchess and him and the Arthur Prince.
Yeah. So it ended up happening is Eisenheim, after the fact, obviously he's been talking with the Duchess privately, because she recognized him and he recognized her from childhood, and you can tell there's sparks there. But obviously she's kind of like, she is kind of independent. She's, when he heard that she was supposed to get married, he asked her, and she's like, well, nothing's in stone yet. But obviously she knows how the prince is. Like, he's a very pissed off and arrogant guy that can do a lot of harmful things to people. So she's probably seen that firsthand. But it doesn't stop them from having a relationship. They end up hooking up late at night one night, and obviously the chief inspector and his guys were tasked to kind of watch over her while she's there. So they were following her, and Eisenheim didn't know that. So he sees what's going on. Of course, Eisenheim's like, we're just childhood friends, yada, yada, yada. But the chief's like, you should watch your step with this. This could lead to bad things for you. But what ends up finally happening is shortly after their liaison, the prince is kind of getting drunk. He's mad. And she's like, I'm leaving. Like, she's going to not stay with him because he's supposed to go to Budapest. And so she's like, I'm leaving. And then they get into an argument to which she walks out to the stables and he follows her. And one guy's viewing it from the window that he's kind of like drunkenly going. And then you hear her scream. A horse comes out with her on it, but she's kind of hunched over, and it just goes out into the woods. The following day, the horse is seen in the city again without her, and then there's this hunt to find her, and so
And
Eisenheim.
there's a gash of blood on the side of the horse, which isn't from the horse; it's from somebody who was on the horse.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So Eisenheim finds her in the water out like one of these rivers or something, and he's distraught. And there's like she had a personal doctor that looked over her or whatever, and he's telling chief inspector that she's passed and that she has a wound somewhere on her that was bleeding. That's where the blood came from, and so chief's like, "Well, can I look at it?" He's like, "Yeah," and there's like no pulse. So now we have her, and we figure she's been murdered. But the chief and some people think it might be Eisenheim that did it. But obviously, Eisenheim, while he was there, says,
Yeah.
the prince did this. He
Yeah.
did this.
The events that lead up to this whole scenario, like you say, the prince wants rid of him, wants to embarrass him, get rid of him. They have this love affair that started as children. There was like this, fascination. There was like a young boy and girl crush there. But also need to remember that when they were young kids, there's that scene where he gives her the necklace.
Yep.
There's a necklace that has like a little cross or something on. And
it's like butterflies, and if you split it, you can hold a picture in it.
Yeah. So he gave her that as a child, and obviously when they had that first reenaction together after many, many years, she still actually has the necklace around her neck, which is important for later on.
Yeah.
And then obviously the sergeant, the police sergeant played by Paul Gamagati, he basically tells the illusionist played by Norton that you need to be very careful what you're doing, because basically he goes over, he actually went over to the illusionist when he's doing his rehearsals, and he starts questioning him, and he goes, but it comes across more like it's a threat.
Yeah.
And he goes, he says to them, I'm just, warning you of things that could potentially happen if you don't stop this flirtation. And because of that, he starts questioning, obviously, the sergeant. And the sergeant's very open, says, well, I kind of am protecting, overlooking what the prince does, because I'm going to be progressed further in my career. Eventually I could become the mayor of Prague or whatever.
There's a very cool moment when they're still where the body is out there in the woods, and Eisenheim says to him, like, well, just how corrupt are you? or do you have any links of the corruption that you are? And then I love how Giamatti plays this off, because his character's like, oh, I'm just getting started. Like, he's doing it sarcastically because he's really a good dude. He's like a really good dude.
Mm-hmm.
But because he's pissed off that Eisenheim would even accuse him of being corrupt.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought I'd bring up the corruption side of his character, because he tells him very straight up early on, you need to watch what you're doing, because I will have to intervene.
Well, and that's the thing too, that the prince is like, he's also threatening the chief inspector. He's like, look, if you're not going to handle this, because he always accuses people of being too stupid to do their jobs.
Yeah.
So he's probably putting pressure on the chief inspector to make sure that he's doing it what he wants to do, because he could ruin the chief inspector's life too. So he's thinking both, like, yeah, I can get somewhere far if I stick with the prince, but then also if I don't do this, I'm going to be ruined. Like,
and it's like a moral. It's like he's got this inner battle with his morals and what's right and wrong, because he wants to progress. Because he's, like you mentioned, he's a good dude. He's probably got a family, and he's thinking of looking after his life and his family and probably all of that stuff. If I progress, if I do this and that, I'm going to look. But it's the way he's going about it. He's kind of giving in to the prince's demands, because it's the easy way to get to where he wants to go, instead of potentially working your ass off for it, and we're doing it the right way. So you see, like this, you even see on his face he's torn, because he like loses his temper a little bit. He's like, listen, if you don't back off, I'm going to have to get involved, and I don't want to get involved. And I'm letting you know, I'm going to have to get involved because the prince will make me get
Oh,
involved.
even later on, he's like, he tells him, he's like, you're very talented and special. Like I could see it, but if you leave me no choice, I have to arrest you.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, like even after that where they find the body, because Heisenheim's like, he did this.
Mm-hmm.
But the chief inspector plays it right. He's like, look, you can't just go accuse the prince of this shit. This will get you beheaded. Like you can't do this shit.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have facts and proof. Now he does take it upon himself to go back to the stables, and he does see the necklace for a hot second. And I don't remember if he picked it up then or came back later for it. I can't remember.
No,
But
he does like his mini little investigation, but I think he's just like not doing it properly because he's like, I know.
well, he got pressured because one of the guys that works for the prince was there, and he was like, "You need to leave," like because he doesn't want him trying to implicate the prince. Like that guy is a total schmuck. He's like just protecting the prince at all costs.
Yeah, and that scene actually is important to talk about as well because when the Duchess was saying, "I'm not going to marry you, I'm leaving, I'm going back to my family," and he's drunk and he's saying, he's like saying, "You can't leave me, you can't do." The next scene that you see is her going into the barn to go on a horse to leave, and he's drunk and he's got the sword with him, and he goes into the barn, and that's all you see. You hear a bit of noises, but the schmuck, like Butler, who you're talking about, you just see him kind of looking out the window and you can hear the scuffle. And the next scene you see is he on the horse, like lying flat, riding out. And then the next thing you see is this prince kind of stumble out of the barn with his sword. So you just assume, and she's been killed or stabbed. And so that just paints the picture that the prince has killed her.
Yeah. And so, obviously at this point they find some random Joe to kind of fill in as the one that killed her. It's, they don't have proof that the prince did. They don't have proof that Eisenheim did. Eisenheim is actually distraught. He's kind of just being alone for a while. He isn't really performing or anything. So he's taking a few days to do that, to grieve.
Yeah.
But so they blame another random person for which Eisenheim knows that guy's not guilty, but either way, Eisenheim decides he's going to come back and he's going to do something different. He's going to do a different type of show. And so his first show back is he brings some random guy who's only half body, like in an apparition type state on stage. And people, the audience is like captivated. They're like, they start talking to it. They're like, "Are you dead?" And the guy doesn't answer because he doesn't really know. He's like, "Where am I?" Or, just random questions about who he was and like that. And so now people are like really intrigued because it's like, wow. So then the next night he brings a little boy. And I think he had a woman come up from the audience and kind of put her hands through, like it's like an actual apparition. Mm-hmm. So again, for the most part, the chief inspector and even Eisenheim at some point has to address the crowd because they get so fervent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's almost like they want to use him as a medium to kind of talk to their own loved ones. That's what they believe he can do.
Yeah. Now, I was enjoying this film up to the point where I just thought it was some sort of illusionist murder mystery film. But then once they started bringing in this new element where with the supernatural tones of him now being able to bring back these apparitions from the other side, it really kind of turned the film into something else and give it a new like whole dimension. And even the police inspector's now looking at what's going on and thinking, is this actually real or is it just another clever illusion? Now even he's like doubting if this is real or if it's an illusion. Right. And obviously because of the whole new kind of, because obviously before he was just doing like basic illusions and tricks, but now doing like apparitions and all that, it's now bringing in a whole new type of audience. In my way, it's really clever because before he was just seen as an illusionist and he had like a certain fan base. The prince has kind of ruined that because of the murder that went on and kind of, you know, blacklisted his reputation. So he goes away for a while, like you said, he's over his grief. He comes back because of the grief, and now he's doing a whole different kind of show with these you know, with all of the bringing back the dead and all this, and he's now bringing back a whole different kind of following. And for me, it's really clever because he's got now basically everybody on his side.
Exactly. Yep. That's the point. He wanted to make sure that if the Prince was going to continue to kind of push back on him and him performing, that he was going to find a way to get the audience to believe in him more than the Prince. And that's what was happening. So much so that by the third night, when he brings an apparition, it's actually the Duchess, and she's there. And again, the crowd they know who she is. So they start asking her, like, who killed you? Who did this? And she doesn't give away a lot because, you know, it's almost as if I actually like the way they do this because it's not like, yeah, she's going to give all the answers. Like, it's like almost like if you were really dealing with a ghost. Like, it can't give you specifics. It might be a memory thing or whatever.
Yeah. But we do need to mention, because he now has this new audience and his show's getting bigger and it's getting this huge reputation, and loads of people who are grieving over lost loved ones are like queuing outside. The Prince then has, like he did before, a curiosity of the new show. So he goes in disguise to the show. But I found it very interesting that the one show you went to is the show where the Duchess is her spirit comes through. And the look on his face, he's like, holy shit. And even the inspector's like, oh, crap.
Well, it's even better because they ask her, like, you know, who killed you? And all she said was, he's in this building.
And then she phases out.
Right, yeah. And so
then
it's so nicely done.
So she phases out. The Prince now's like in shock. He then kind of gets up and kind of tries to leave. And that is when the police inspector, to make sure nothing goes further, he shuts the show down.
Yep. So then that leads us to that discussion between the chief inspector and Eisenheim. He's like, look, man, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if this is illusion. You're clearly special. You can do a lot of cool stuff, but you can't do this anymore. I can't have you. He's like, don't bring her back. And that's when he basically says, well, I can promise you'll enjoy this next show. He just plays off of it. But he does in order to, because he was in danger of being arrested. And so what he does was he goes to his balcony and he announces to the crowd that's outside, because they're in support of him. They don't want him arrested, but the chief inspector's like, look, they think this shit's real, man. I can't have you doing this. So he goes out, Eisenheim, to the balcony and says, look, all this is an illusion. None of it's real. I can't bring loved ones back. Even though deep down he knows what he's doing, like in terms of bringing these people back, the reality is, in order to save him from not going to jail, he has to say this to the public. Now, granted, to their credit, none of them buy it. They're all into this 100%.
Well, to this point, I didn't buy it because I thought he's got all this new ability that he's been hiding. Because don't forget, right at the beginning of the movie, when you see the younger version, in the fathers or the people are looking for the Duchess who's with him, she says, make her disappear. Yeah. And he doesn't do anything. What made me think, so years down the line, has he actually developed some sort of real ability?
Right.
So, and that's the mystery of what you're saying.
Well,
is it really
you and I will
illusion-y?
Discuss at the end of this, because that's something that never really comes clear, how he's able to perform this trick.
Yeah.
But so he does another show. And so now, again, he brings her back again. So again, there's this, they're looking at each other. They're acknowledging one another. Chief Inspector has all his guys there. He says, block every entrance, because if he brings her back, we got to arrest him. He goes up there to the stage, and they go to take him, and they realize he's an apparition. He's not even there. So Eisenheim is like just a ghost on stage, and the crowd's like, wow, they're like just blown away.
And then he disappears.
Then he disappears. And that really kind of leads us to like the best part of the fucking movie, man. Like this, when I saw the end of this film, I just
Yeah.
like,
The
oh
second
my
part
god,
is all about the inspector. He basically becomes the hero of the piece in many ways.
oh yeah, easily. So yeah, so after Eisenheim disappears, something that was found in the stables, because obviously the necklace that the chief inspector recovered, as well as a gem. And the inspector inspects the sword of the prince and finds that the gem was missing from the sword. So that now leads him to believe that, oh, okay, this is proof that this guy was there when that girl was killed. So he also happens to know the deeps ins and outs of what the prince plans to do with the emperor in terms of overtaking the emperor. So smart chief inspector, prior to approaching the prince about the murder, sends out a letter to the emperor and his people to let him know, hey, one, your son killed somebody, and two, he's planning on taking your shit. So you might want to come check out what your son's doing.
Yep.
So he walks in and confronts the prince, and he's like, I have this, and again, this is a great performance by Sewell too, as the prince, because he was so passionate. And it's funny because he's like, you're buying into his illusion. He's just this is all illusion. Yeah, that's what he's doing, right? He's telling this guy it's all an illusion. And the chief inspector's like, look, man, the chick's dead. I touched her. She's gone. Like, so basically, he's got the sword. You know, he found a locket in there as well in the stable, so that's where they both were at. So clearly, she was hurt there before she ran off with the horse and died or whatever. But the prince is pissed because once the inspector tells him about the letter, and then you start hearing the hoofs come from the horses because they're coming early in the morning. Smart again by the inspector to send it out the night before.
He's like, that's probably the emperor's men. And he's like, oh,
yeah, he's so like sighs like,
because basically the prince, when the prince is there, so the inspector comes with the sword and he's got all the evidence. He goes, listen, the evidence is against the wall for you now. Basically, do the right thing. Basically, because obviously the inspector, after everything he's seen, even though he wants to progress in his career, he wants to, in the end, he chooses to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And he confronts the prince, and like you say, he's just so egotistical and all this, and he says, basically, I'm going to ruin you, the prince. I'm going to, what years are
that was his trump card, because if he tried to just arrest the prince could easily just squash him and say, no, you can't do this, because that's he'll be like, this is not really proof. But when he sends that letter, that's a bigger fucking deal. Like, that's a really big deal. And that's really his trump card here. He's like, yeah, I'm going to get you for murder, but I'm also going to tell your dad that you're fucking trying to overtake him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as you said, he's at the window. He hears the hooves of the horses coming, the army for the emperor or whatever. And the prince grabs a gun, pretty much threatening to kill the chief inspector. And the inspector's like, this isn't going to do you any good either. You kill me, it's just going to add to your problems. And again, Rufus Sewell, so great as the prince, because he's breaking down. He's literally going kind of crazy now. He's like, he's upset. He's like, why is no one listening to me? I'm trying to help people. He's like, because in terms of his overtake and everything. So he's really struggling with the fact that he's been caught. Like, he can't get out of it.
Yeah.
So his only resort now is to he shoots himself, because they're at the door. They're trying to get in. So he shoots himself, and the inspector's, trying to see if he's alive still, which he's not. But the guys get in. They're like, what the fuck happened? He's like, Prince shot himself. So
it was just Louise. It was like killed himself. Nothing else to do.
Himself. Can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But so that all happens, and that pretty much solves that. But as the specter comes out of the mansion or whatever it is that the prince was at, they were confronting, a young boy runs up to him with the envelope. And he says, hey, you Chief Inspector Walter Ewell? And he's like, yeah. And so he gives him this, and then as this is going on, there's people walking around. Someone bumps into him and kind of keeps walking. So that he takes the envelope. And the boy runs off, and he starts to look at it. And it's the notebook for the orange tree trick. This is something that he kind of come across the book earlier in the film, but it didn't have the missing pieces to show the trick. It just had notes. So he starts looking and he sees like all the shit's there. Like it tells you how it was done. So he looks back and he looks for the boy. He's like, "Hey, who gave you this?" He's like, "Eisenheim." And so now, like, the inspector's like, and he remembers the guy that bumped into him.
So he checked his pocket.
That's where the locket was. The locket was in his pocket, but it's not there anymore. So now he sees a guy walking away that he thinks is the one that bumped into him. So he starts chasing him. Now, the thing to remember the other thing about this movie that's so fucking great, and I don't know if you feel the same way, soundtrack is fucking amazing in this.
The soundtrack's it suckers you into. It fits perfectly with every scene, and like this particular scene where he's chasing after the guy, who you do see his face, and it is Eisenhome.
Yeah, he's in disguise.
He's in disguise with like a ginger beard and hair and a hat and all this stuff. And the next few scenes are the best. Like, for example, so the end of the film, what happens is he chases after him, the inspector. He gets to the train station, but there's like two scenes kind of happening. You're seeing what's happening from the perspective of Eisenhome, of him walking fast to get to the train. You see him get on the train and then they see the other perspective of him chasing after the train. He reaches the train, but the train's now left the station. He then starts looking into the book, the sergeant, and then he starts reading the information, and then everything starts to click together.
Yeah, as he was following Eisenhower and Sophie throughout the film, he heard certain things. So like there was a moment where Eisenheim was talking to her doctor, and it's like, "You're gonna follow her a week later, so and so." We don't even know that really reference at the time until this moment.
Yes,
because the inspector starts putting things together. And it's like, wait a minute. And some of the stuff we don't even know because they don't tell you early in the film, so it's more of like a recollection of what they ended up doing. But he's putting it together because he understands that how it can be done. He's a cop.
Yeah, the whole thing basically has been a huge plot and plan by the Duchess.
The greatest trick ever made.
Yes, in the Eisenhome. And throughout the course of the movie, on top of the sergeant, like, listening into things and hearing things just from one perspective, you also had a couple of these men, police officers, that would who would spy on Eisenhome and the Duchess, and they would see certain things and hear certain things, and you would only hear that one thing. So like you mentioned, the doctor, he'll follow you ahead a week later. Strange. So how can the doctor follow her a week later if she's died?
Right.
So straight away, bang, something clicks in his head about that. Then it goes back.
It had some sort of drug that would make it seem like she had passed away, like slow her heartbeat or something.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we see the scene where the doctor, or maybe even Eisen, I can't remember who it was, probably the doctor, so it wouldn't look so suspicious, but he gives her the antidote, to which she comes back to life and breathes. So then they would show clips of where Eisenheim only had the sword during the private viewing, took the jewel out, which was going to be his, his evidence to drop. And then, of course, when the prince stumbles into the stables, he's so drunk, he actually passes out in the haystack. So at that point, because the Duchess did drug his alcohol a little bit, so that's part of it too. So she's all in on this. She's putting like blood or whatever on the sword. I don't know where the blood came from, but they put it there. She kind of does her own self and then goes out, and that's how they see her on the horse. But it's all a ploy to make it believe that the prince killed her, that attacked her or whatever.
Give us 1 sec. I'm just going to let the cat out the room because it's going mad. Logan's going to scratch me door.
So, so what you're getting is a great great trick, the best illusion that Eisenheim is pulling off here by making it look like the prince actually killed killed the Duchess. So it's a great trick. And by the time we start getting to the end, uh, Eisenheim ends up back at his cabin or whatever it was. It was out in really nowhere. It's like a few miles away.
So how I took this, I'm going to give it from my perspective. So this is how I looked at this. The end of this movie is right at the beginning of the movie. You've got her and him as little children who have a crush on each other. They're in the back of this cabin on her family's land. She said, let's make us disappear, and it didn't happen. They reconnected years down the line. They fell in love. She's in an abusive relationship with the prince, a relationship she doesn't want to be in, but there's no way they can be together without him hunting her down forever. So for me, this whole plot was simply for two things. One, the prince is a bad dude. He's egotistical. He's going to be a power-hungry king, and they didn't want somebody like that in power. So it was a way to overthrow him from getting into power, but it was also a way for them to be together at the end. So really, if you think right at the beginning of the movie where she says, make us disappear, eventually
That's what he did. That's what he did. Made her disappear. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he ends up back at the cabin. She's there like cleaning one of the horses, and then he gives her a locket back. And of course, they're in love, so they're gonna live the rest of their life together, not having to worry about the prince looking over their shoulder or anything like that. But the greatest thing is that the inspector never catches up with Eisenheim. He has no idea where Eisenheim went. So, but you see it again, as Kevin points to, they kind of go back and forth from the thing, how they pulled it off, to the inspector figuring it out. That's how he figured it out. So, but the wonderful thing about Giamatti in this film is that his character, despite knowing that he kind of got duped along with the prince, he's impressed that they were able to do this. And at the same time, I think he feels a bit of relief because deep down, as you said, he doesn't want to be a corrupt cop. He wants to progress in his life, but not at the rate the prince was trying to do it. So in a way, they took out a problem, which was the prince, while also, getting out without him knowing. Like, that's part of the trick.
And how I took the ending is they got rid of the corrupt prince who was power hungry. The inspector himself was stuck between a rock and a hard place of doing the right thing, and they were trapped. So in a way, they freed themselves of the burden of this prince. So in a way, he's impressed that they have done this and got away with it and set themselves free. But in many ways, they've set the inspector free. And the fact that but they also if you think about, the inspector set himself free, because if you think about it, because the prince was holding him kind of hostage with threatening him and all it, right? And soon as it's like if you were approached by a gangster, for example, and the gangster asks you to do something for him which is illegal or something horrendous, and you say yes and you've done it, he's forever got you.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is like, even if the prince doesn't kill himself and gets arrested, that prince still has connections. So the chief would still be looking over his shoulder the rest of his life. So Eisenheim did him a favor.
he did, but then I also think he did himself a favor, because I think he all along had the answers of how to get out of it, and that was to contact the emperor.
He totally planned it.
But because he had in his mind about progressing to be the mayor of the town with the help of the prince, it clouded his judgment. But the more he's seen Eisenhower and what he was going through and realizing what he was doing was wrong, the more he realized, I cannot do this anymore. But then he set himself free in a way because he contacted the emperor of his own volition.
Yep.
And because he done that, he kind of screwed the king over, where if he was thinking in the right mind, he could have just done that from the beginning. He could have just went, what do you want me to do? I'm just going to send your dad a message. Give me, and you would have had him banked the rights there and then. But because of the corruption and being told, I'm going to give you this, and he fell into the corruption. But then right at the end, he pulled himself out of it, and then Eisenhower and the Duchess set themselves free, and like you say, you made them disappear.
Yeah. So, what would you rate The Illusionist?
It's a great film. I really enjoyed it. It was much better than I expected to be. And like you've talked about how great the performance are, well put together cast, great story overall. So I'm going to rate this. I think it's fair to give this 8 out of 10.
Okay. For me, this is one of my favorite films ever, as well as The Prestige, which we kind of talked about, came out the same year. I love the performances in this. I love the story. I love the execution. I love the whole twist ending because I did not expect that.
Yes.
So this film is still a 10 out of 10 for me. Hasn't changed. I mean, I enjoyed this film a lot, and I'm glad you enjoyed it as well.
Yes.
So tell everybody what you've got coming up on the entertainment headquarters.
Well, I will be doing my own personal tribute to the movie Jaws because it's now hitting its 50th anniversary. So I'm going to be doing something called Jaws Legacy, which is basically, it's going to be a small video, but it's going to be talking about the impact of Jaws and how it created its own genre, which is, we've got ever since Jaws, we've had that many good and terrible shark movies. So I'm going to be, hitting it home with that. Then the next day, tomorrow, we have the Retro Classic Movie Show, which is going to be a special on the first 4 Karate Kid movies. And then next week, I'm going to be doing on the 16th, I'm going to be doing the next education episode, which is where I bring on a guest and they educate me on a genre or something in entertainment and pop culture that I don't know about. And I'm going to be talking about the Thunderbirds. And then we've got Television Chronicles coming up, where it's going to be me and Mr. Tony of the Dead talking about, of course, the series that I gave him, and I thought, it'd be a great opportunity for him to watch it, The Terror Season 1. But letting people know for the next cinematic synergy, I have got my pick, and we're going back to 1995. And we're going to be talking about Screamers.
Oh, Screamers. Okay. Good choice. As for me, today I've got Ghouls at Midnight, both with my pick as well as Tony. So we'll get those handled and out of the way. Friday, we were doing a live review of Predators, Killer of Killers. So it'll be me, Mr. Lamper, and a couple others to review that. And then Saturday, I'm getting together with Anthony Jordan to do the Jaws 50th, to review that and talk about that film, its legacy, is some of the stuff that Kevin's going to talk about in his little video. And then later in the evening, Silver Screen Savants with Olvin, I'll be doing his pick on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So we're getting back into the Bond stuff. So that's immediately what's coming up the rest of the week here in the Metal Time Radio podcast.
Yeah.
So as always, thank you, Mr. Lambert, for being here and doing this with me. Please go like and subscribe to the Entertainment Headquarters. Great fucking channel, great content, and a great dude.
Yeah. And let everybody know, you mentioned a little bit at the beginning of the stream, but the Entertainment Headquarters would not have been here and would not be here without this dude in front of you, my good friend, Mr. DJ Anubis, and the Metal Tavern Radio. Like he said, where you've been doing this kind of show for a few, months, over a year now. And it's because of this show that he gave me a platform to finally have a place on YouTube. And it's because of this, it inspired me to finally, break out and do my own channel. So it's thanks to Cinematic Synergy and the Metal Tavern Radio.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much. You definitely deserve all the kudos and the fame that you're getting with this. Hopefully your channel keeps growing as well as ours. We are part of the Sci-Fi Collective, so we have a lot of different collaborators that we get together and talk entertainment because we love talking movies like you all do out there that watch us. So again, like and subscribe. Give us your opinions. What do you think about The Illusionist? We always like to get feedback, and we'll try to get back to see if we'll get a vote for what maybe you guys want us to pick for us for the next one. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, we'll do Screamers, but then maybe down the road we'll get the audience involved again.
Yeah, audience choice.
Yeah, so either way, again, thanks for all the support, everybody, and we'll see you next time on the Metal Tavern Radio podcast.
You see me before you die. Find the blood.